This is the World Financial Report podcast. My name is Randy Marshall. Joining us is our financial and diamond expert, Harold Siegel. We're taping on November 1st, 2018. Our time is 8:11 Mountain. Don't forget, this weekend, Sunday, the time change. Spring forward, fall back. Clocks go back 1 hour. Here in Canada, November 11, Remembrance Day is on a Sunday. That means a lot of people will be getting time off on the Monday. Connect with Harold at 1-800-432-1022. His website is rarecoloreddiamonds.com. rarecoloreddiamonds.com. Let's get into the numbers. The US dollar this morning at 96.50. Canadian dollar is at 76.45. The euro at 113. The pound at 129. Gold is at 12.28. Silver 14.57. Gold silver ratio is 85. Platinum 852, palladium 1081, WTI is 65.28, Brent is 74.85, nat gas 327, Bitcoin in US dollars 6,300.04, and Bitcoin in Canadian 8,200.44. The Dow at 25,245, S&P 2711, Nasdaq 7340, the TSX 15,027. In the month of October, and this is off of the Drudge Report, there were $2 trillion vanished in the month of October. A major pullback in the stock markets, the Dow, S&P, Nasdaq, TSX. It was a very, very bad month. Harold, as well as we start the podcast, our thoughts and prayers to those affected by the shooting in Pittsburgh at the synagogue. It was just a terrible thing to see. It's unspeakable that somebody would do that, and we send our thoughts and prayers to them.
You bet, Randy. It was, it hit close to home, obviously, with my family being Jewish, but just absolutely despicable and obviously extremely concerning that 57% of hate crimes in the United States are directed towards the Jewish people. Why? I have absolutely no idea. Jewish people are mostly peaceful, non-confrontational, good in business, and family people. I just don't understand this. He was obviously a white supremacist, had tremendous hatred towards the Jews, and to see 11 people killed was just absolutely horrific. And I think what was despicable is that the Vice President, Mike Pence, when he was doing his bit on the shootings in Pittsburgh and the heartfelt everything, what he did is he brought in a rabbi who was not even a rabbi. He was a rabbi to convert Jews into Christian. So what a debacle, and what an embarrassment for the White House to do this at a time when the whole country is up in arms about this despicable act. So, between Donald Trump, who wasn't even wanted at the ceremonies, at the funerals and things like that in Pittsburgh, and then Mike Pence pulling this idiotic stunt, the White House has got such little credibility at this particular point. It's absolutely disgusting to see how they actually handled that situation. So that's all I really have to say about that. The stock market was extremely volatile the past 2 weeks. And as you mentioned, Randy, a couple trillions of dollars were lost. But in all essence, they're not lost, because in the stock market, you have buyers and sellers. When the market goes up, you make money if you're long the market. If the market goes down and you short the market, you're going to make money. So the fact is that when the market dropped as much as it did, and Amazon, lost as much market value as they did, somebody was short that market. So that market, the money just didn't disappear into thin air. Somebody took the opposite side of the trade, shorted the market, and made all that money. Now, I doubt it was one person. It could have been a hedge fund. It could have been, some very astute, very high-end investors. But to see that type of decline and to capitalize in the trillions of dollars, it had to be a very, very substantial bet. The other thing that happened is that the U.S. dollar was really starting to climb. In fact, we saw this week we saw actually last week that the gold market climbed back up above the 1,200 level, hit about 1,220, 1,225 in that area. Then it started to sell off as the U.S. dollar got stronger, which it did. The U.S. dollar got to 97.50 this week, which is why gold was back down and trying to drop below the 1,200 level till today, which is Thursday, when the U.S. dollar went down substantially, about 75 points, or 3/4 of a penny, and gold was up $13 so far on the day. So again, you've got that tie-in between the gold and the U.S. dollar market, and until something changes, the market's basically trading in a range. But I do believe that with higher interest rates, that we could see a sideways type of market because we have inflation. And the reason that we're seeing interest rates go up is because the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates to try to fight inflation. And that's what's going on at this particular point. The other serious situation is oil. Oil's dropped back down to $65. There is going to be sanctions against Iran starting either this week or next week. That means that Iran's oil is going to be off the market. Does that mean that oil is going to rally, as no Iranian oil is going to be able to be sold? So we'll have to see what happens next week. But again, at this point here, we had 0.75 drop in the U.S. dollar today, which is why gold is up $13.
Connect with Harold at rarecoloreddiamonds.com. Rarecoloreddiamonds.com. 1-800-432-1022. Get the companion to the podcast. That is our free weekly newsletter. We put it together in a way that, yes, we know you're busy, but you can go through it in mere minutes and be up to date or spend hours. One of the things that caught our attention this week is more about the debt and deficit problems in the United States. Right off the top of the newsletter, chart of the week, Treasury sees 2018 borrowing needs surging to $1.34 trillion. The U.S. Treasury Department said government borrowing this year will double from 2017 to $1.34 trillion. A couple of people coming out and talking about the debt. Janet Yellen, former head of the Federal Reserve, she was not rehired. Donald Trump picked Powell instead to replace her. Also, U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton. Yellen said, when she gave a speech, that rising deficits are unsustainable. If I had a magic wand, I would raise taxes and cut retirement spending. She told that to CNBC's Steve Leisman at the Charles Schwab Impact Conference in Washington. They say that the U.S. debt is unsustainable. Yellen noted it will only get worse as baby boomers retire and spending on retirement and healthcare programs grow. Surprising that somebody within the Trump administration would come out and make this statement. U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton called the national debt a threat to society. That's a major statement. That requires significant cuts to the government's discretionary spending. Bolton, speaking Wednesday at an event hosted by the Alexander Hamilton Society in Washington, said he expects U.S. defense spending to flatten out in the near term. He said he didn't anticipate major cuts to entitlements such as Medicare and Social Security. It is a fact that when your national debt gets to the levels ours is, that it constitutes an economic threat to society. And that kind of ultimate threat has a national security consequence for it. Harold, the United States is already in debt over $21.5 trillion. The deficit's over $1 trillion a year. You do the math. This is going to put the United States in serious trouble.
You bet. And, Yellen is correct. That's what has to be done. And Trump is doing the exact opposite. So the fact is that this debt, combined with higher interest rates, is going to cripple this country. And the fact is that, those that are retiring, the baby boomers, they're more cautious today. They got wiped out in 2008 and 9, in a lot of cases because their money was in stocks. And after the market fell as much as it did, many got out of the market and never had a chance to make that money as the market did recover. So again, it's going to be difficult times. There's no doubt that Trump is not lowering interest rates. He's raising interest rates, or the Fed is, but the fact is that Trump lowered taxes. The fact is that she would do the opposite. And that's exactly what I would have done also in the sense of you need the additional income. The fact is that with people paying less taxes, he obviously thinks that by paying less taxes, companies are going to do better. They're going to be hiring more people, and they're going to do more business. And that makes sense in theory. It just isn't happening. So that's where the problem arises, and the lack of tax revenue coming in is hurting the country and going to increase the deficit. So again, I don't know where this guy thinks he's going. Trump is hanging his hat on the fact that since he's been in office, here's what the stock market has done. He can't say that anymore. For 2018, the market is down for the year. So there goes his great hurrah. And see, what he's going to do now in a potentially down market, because has he really, done everything that he thinks that he needed to do? He lowered interest rates. He lowered taxes, and that was his big thing, which was to really get the economy back on track, is to put more money into the taxpayers' pockets. So again, if that's happening, it's not really reflecting in the economy at this point, and I really do believe it's going to jump up and bite him, because I just don't see the economy getting that much stronger.
We talked about GE stock in the past. Harold had warned us around the time of the financial crisis, 2008. Be very careful about this company, and it has proven 100% correct. GE this week slashed its quarterly dividend to a mere penny. That's a major fall from grace, and the company is taking a $22 billion impairment charge and restructuring its power unit. Stay away from GE. That is a company that is definitely in serious trouble. One thing we have in our free weekly newsletter, and I really connected with it because I do believe this person is correct. Volatile equity markets are the new normal, says the head of Natixis SA's $1 trillion asset management arm. We're back to the basics. Risk on, risk off, according to Jean Raby, the chief executive officer of Natixis Investment Managers, said in an interview Tuesday at the Canadian FinTech Forum in Montreal. Over the past several years, in a way, bad news was good news because it meant a more accommodating monetary policy. Now we're in the real world where bad news is bad news, and good news may not be just such great news. That said, underlying fundamentals aren't bad, he stressed. No single region in contraction, and emerging markets contagion from Turkey and Argentina is probably overstated. I have to believe, when I look at the fundamentals, that we're still on pretty sound footing. But I do agree with him, Harold, that we are in a new market with quantitative easing being drawn down. We are back to a more normalized market, and I think we will start to see, instead of these long periods of time where there's stability, we're going to see some very big moves up and down because things are getting back to a more normal situation.
Well, very true. Volatility is what makes the markets work, because who's in the market are speculators and hedgers, basically. So, the hedgers are the more conservative, and the speculators take on more risk. In order for a market to work like a commodity or a stock market, you need both participants in the market. They don't work without them. The commodities markets were always a hedging market for farmers and growers and herders and miners. And basically, it was the speculators that would come into the market and add the liquidity. And that's what's needed in both markets. So, what is the new normal? You've got a totally different mind sync from younger investors today than when we were younger and then when our parents were younger. So, the markets have changed tremendously over the years, and they will always continue to change as new products come on the market and different opportunities arise. So, at this particular point, the markets are, really reacting to news on a daily basis and what's happening politically. But there are major stumbling blocks in the market. One of them is China. The U.S. and China are not getting along, obviously. Iran now has sanctions against them. The U.S. and Russia. The U.S. and other countries, Canada, Mexico, at this particular point, it's almost like the U.S. is in it just for themselves at this particular point, and Trump is just creating enemies everywhere he goes. So we're going to have to see what happens with the market at this point. We've seen the most amazing bull market in history as the Dow went, on a 10-year run and went basically from 6,500 to 26,500. So that was the biggest bull market in all of stocks. We were also present for the biggest bull market in gold, from 2000 to 2011, that took gold from 250 to 1900. So we're seeing some amazing markets. It's a matter of who's participating and if you're able to capitalize on them and catch them at the beginning of that trend.
Speak with Harold about blockchain. What exactly is blockchain, and how can you take advantage of that for your financial gain? Ask him about rare colored diamonds, Argyle pink diamonds. There is an opportunity with the mine shutting down in Western Australia in about 2 years' time. They do an Argyle pink diamond tender. That wrapped up in October. We're waiting for the results. It should come out here in the next couple of weeks. They say that they're only doing maybe 2-3 more tenders, and that is it. There is an opportunity by investing in Argyle pink diamonds. Speak with Harold. 1-800-432-1022. His website, rarecoloreddiamonds.com. Some good news. U.S. consumer confidence rose in October to an 18-year high amid optimism about jobs and the economy. Robust jobs market sees another 227,000 hires in October, that according to ADP and Moody Analytics. Wages and salaries jumped 3.1%, the highest level in a decade. How are marijuana stocks doing? What's happening in Canada when it comes to marijuana? It was legalized October the 17th. My personal feeling was they rushed it. They should have waited, even if they waited another year. And I understand why they didn't want to wait another year. We have an election coming up in the fall of 2019. They wanted to do it now, even if we weren't 100% ready. So as a result of Canada not being ready, many people across the country have had a tough time accessing the product legally. Canadians are turning to the black market to pick up where provincially run retailers have dropped the ball. In Toronto, Canada's most populous city, the black market has seen new life breathed into it as a result of the shortages, all coming from not being ready. A lot of these companies that were building stores, they were there at the last minute putting everything together, trying to be ready for customers that were lined up around the block, and it just has not worked out. Lakewood Capital Management LP's Anthony Boza recommended shorting Tilray, Canopy Growth, and Aurora Cannabis at the Robinhood Investors Conference in New York. And that's smart money, saying, short these stocks. They are overvalued. Harold, the way this was handled by the Canadian government was very poorly done. There are so many questions that are outstanding still, and I think that if they had waited, then it would have given more time for the average Canadian to understand what this meant to them. And companies that did want to sell would have had more time to be prepared. As a result, what's happening is what you did not want to happen, and that is people going into the black market as a result of the lack of supply.
Well, that the black market has always been there. So all it means is that obviously the government cannot supply, cannot meet demand. So in that sense, you're 100% right. They weren't prepared. On the other hand, if they didn't do it when they did, then maybe it wouldn't have made its way through. So they pushed it through. So again, if it was a year too early, so be it. They'll deal with it. They'll deal with the struggles. And when the shops are loaded with product, then they'll do their business. But the black market has always been there.
One thing we saw in California is that when the regulated market became too expensive, people went back to the black market because marijuana was cheaper. So we will see over time how this plays out in Canada. One story that caught my attention this week, it is in our free weekly newsletter. Get it from Harold. We'll be happy to send it out to you via email. A whopping 62% of jobs don't support a middle-class life. Esther Akutha, who lives in Brooklyn, New York, has a good job as a public relations specialist that pays more than $50,000 a year, but because of a $1,440 a month rent on her studio apartment in New York, she never takes vacations, dines out just once a month, and scrapes together dinner leftovers for lunch the next day. She says, I'm frustrated with the fact I'm not going to be able to save anything because my rent is so high, and she's in her 30s. I don't even know if I can afford to have children, despite an unemployment rate that has reached a 50-year low at 3.7%. Most jobs across the United States don't support middle-class life or a better lifestyle, leaving many Americans struggling. According to a new study, 62% of jobs fall short of the middle-class standard when factoring in both wages and the cost of living in the metro area where the job is located, according to a study by Third Way, a think tank. A slight majority of Americans, 52%, do live in middle-class households, according to a recent Pew Research Center report. Another 20% or so live in upper-income households, and that's because they're juggling multiple jobs, for example, or relying on investments, an inheritance, or other household members who have higher paying jobs. Harold, this does not surprise me. This is why Donald Trump, I think, did get elected. You have 62% of people out there working in the United States, and they can't afford a middle-class lifestyle. That is a serious problem. People are just looking for someone to help them out, make their lives better. And so far, it seems, as much as Donald Trump and his supporters believe he's done, there are still a lot of people that are not prospering and advancing during this administration.
Well, that's for sure. You know, the numbers are all deceiving because on one hand, they're saying that things have never been better. Unemployment is at a 20 or 30-year low. However, they don't come out and say that the wages are not substantial enough to support. If it's not substantial enough to support a middle-class lifestyle, that means that you're poor. There's only three classes. So if you're not rich and you're not middle class, you're poor. And if you're making $50,000 a year and you are not considered middle class anymore, then that's an indication that there's going to be further problems moving forward because, you know, in all honesty, these millennials are not the hardest workers in the world. They don't have the work ethic and they don't have the drive and the ambition in most cases. So I just don't see over the long run how things are going to get much better. If you can't live on $50,000 a year, but then again, when you're living in New York, you're paying state taxes as well as federal taxes, and those are high, and living expenses are much higher. To live in New York, it's the most expensive city in North America to live. There's nothing that compares to New York, and most people could never afford to, you know, to live there. And in all honesty, why would you? Because it is so expensive, and then you've got the additional taxes. And if you've ever eaten in their restaurants, you know what I'm talking about. And try to go to a show or stay in a hotel. New York is by far the most expensive place to live. And if you're not earning several hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, you're at a big disadvantage because somebody who may make, you know, $50,000 a year in Indiana is the same as making $100,000 a year in New York. So, you know, just very, very difficult to get by there and to put away any money. And as we've reported on many shows, most Americans don't have money put away for their future, for their retirement, or couldn't even meet a $500 emergency. That's how tough things are. But then when you look at the market and you hear Trump and you hear everybody else, oh, things are great in the United States. Well, it's not great if you can't live on that kind of money. So, again, you've got two different camps. And at this point, I'm from the camp that things are not as great here as some people think it is.
Harold brought up a very good point, and that is if you're basing things just on the stock market, the vast majority of people are not in the stock market as a result of the financial crisis. We do know that for a fact. So if you're basing things just on the stock market going up, it is a real false indicator of how well things are. And that goes for Canada as well. People are saying, and I've read this in different articles, when it comes to taking jobs, well, I can't take a job in Vancouver or I can't take a job in Toronto because I can't get a house there. Or the money that they're going to pay me won't go as far as if I was in, let's say, Winnipeg or Calgary or Edmonton, Kelowna. So you have to see right now, whether it is Canada or the United States, things aren't quite as good as people are portraying them to be. Speak with Harold about rare colored diamonds. His website, rarecoloreddiamonds.com. This week it was announced Blue Diamonds to lead Sotheby's auction. A blue diamond ring estimated estimated at 9 to 12 million, will go under the hammer at Sotheby's Geneva auction November 15th, alongside a roster of rare colored diamonds. The rectangular cut 5.04 carat fancy vivid blue piece is one of 3 blue diamonds set to feature at the Magnificent Jewels and Noble Jewels sale. The auction will also include earrings containing 2.61 carat and 3.06 carat diamonds with a pre-sale estimate of $8 to $10 million. There's a brilliant cut 2.02 carat fancy intense blue internally flawless diamond valued at $2 to $3 million that rounds out the set. This is something that we've talked about before on the show, as that pink legacy diamond that could go for 30 to 50 million will be offered by Christie's. So Christie's will be having a sale right at the same time as Sotheby's in Geneva. Blue diamonds featured at Sotheby's. I did go back to the summer and peeled off a story we had in our free weekly newsletter as a reminder. We put it back in for this week. The secret origins of blue diamonds are finally coming to the surface, and it all has to do with the fact that blue diamonds are found at the lowest level of the Earth's crust. Read that story. It is absolutely fascinating. One thing that we like too about diamonds is the history behind them. The sweeping saga of royal jewels from Europe's most powerful ruling families, the Bourbon-Parma family collection of jewels, including those worn by Marie Antoinette, connects us to the great rulers of the past 200 years, and they actually will be up for auction coming up in Geneva as well. Just think about it, Harold. A jewel that was worn by Marie Antoinette, owned by her family, going up for auction. How exciting is that you would have an opportunity to bid on it and own a diamond from 200 years ago? That's a story that we just love. In fact, it's going to be sold with Christie's November the 14th. So there's going to be a lot here at the middle of November that we'll be keeping an eye on in the diamond world, because they're going to be offering some diamonds that are just simply outstanding.
You bet. Can't wait for Marilyn Monroe's diamond to come up for sale. Marie Antoinette, I mean, that is unbelievable to actually think that you could own something from that long ago, from a few hundred years ago, that belonged to such an iconic figure. So, man, that's exciting. I love those. I mean, we've talked about, famous people that have auctioned off items in the past, but Marie Antoinette, that's going to be exciting. And obviously, last couple of weeks, we've been talking about Marilyn Monroe's ring, and that's going to be spectacular. Cannot wait to see what that diamond fetches.
And once again, Harold, blue diamonds, very hot.
Oh, you bet. I mean, we've been following blues ever since I wrote the article on diamonds almost 15 years ago. So blue diamonds have done probably better than any investment out there. Back in 2005, I remember an auction where an important vivid blue diamond sold for $200,000 a carat. And then last year, a vivid blue diamond sold for over $5 million a carat. In fact, the intenses are going for over $1 million a carat, but the heavily saturated vivids, when they ever come onto the market, which is very, very, very seldom that a vivid blue diamond will come on of size, and those diamonds are up to 4 to 5 million, where basically 10 to 13 years ago, they were in the hundreds of thousands a carat. That's how much these amazing diamonds have gone up. You need boron for a diamond to turn blue, and it's extremely rare for boron to seep into the ground and turn a diamond blue. That's why it's so amazing that if you've ever seen a blue diamond, now don't forget there's light blue, there's intense, there's deep, and then the highly saturated vivid are the most expensive of all, and the vivid diamonds are just, they'll take your breath away. So again, just really excited to see what those diamonds are going to sell for, and I love when they come to auction because there's normally some great stories attached to them.
One story we want you to read in our free weekly newsletter, get it from Harold, 1-800-432-1022, or rarecolorediamonds.com, the auction season's real gems. As the auction season for jewelry begins, there's probably no better place to examine these sales than Christie's, which appears to have held the first auction in 1795. That's when James Christie's 29-year-old London auction house sold the glittery collection of Madame du Barry. She was Louis's longtime mistress 2 years after she was executed by the guillotine. The good old days. You didn't have divorce, you had the guillotine, and they are going to be selling that jewel off December the 5th at Rockefeller Center in New York City. This article is a must-read because it goes through all the different auctions that are coming up in New York and Geneva and highlights the different gems. Get it from Harold. You can connect with him at rarecoloreddiamonds.com or 1-800-432-1022. As we get towards the end of the podcast, Harold, it was 10 years ago this week that Bitcoin came to life. And obviously there are people who are strong believers, there are skeptics, but one thing we do know is that blockchain is something that came along with Bitcoin that people are embracing in the financial world, in the business world, and that may be the ultimate legacy for Bitcoin. I was very skeptical when Bitcoin came out, but I do believe that if there are coins out there that are backed by something, then you're in a scenario that I think it is very, very interesting. But happy 10th birthday to Bitcoin. But the ultimate story behind it may be in the long-term blockchain, Harold.
You bet. Now, Bitcoin came out and really started trading in 2013, came out at pennies. Most people looked at cryptocurrencies at that time as a way of doing illegal business, untraceable business. So arms dealers and drug dealers and people that are laundering money and that got into Bitcoin at the beginning. But again, don't forget, you could have bought Bitcoin for pennies, and it went to $20,000. Now that it's trading and it's been around for quite a while, it's settled in between the 6,000 and 7,000 range. Still a gigantic price for a crypto coin that is basically backed by nothing. But Bitcoin has done very well. So has Ethereum, which is the Russian coin. Light is a coin that did well. These are all coins that came out basically at zero and have traded in the hundreds of dollars. Ethereum did get up as high as 800. What Randy's talking about is a blockchain, and blockchain is basically a ledger that allows you to trade in products on a worldwide basis. And what's really exciting about it is that in many cases, you can do shared ownership. So in our case, for example, if we were selling a multi-million-dollar diamond and we put that diamond up at auction, we'd have to find one buyer that could pay 2, 3, 5, 10 million, whatever the price of the diamond was, which is not always the easiest thing to do, to find one person that has that kind of money. However, with blockchain, you could do shared ownerships, meaning that, let's say, for example, we had that same multi-million-dollar diamond, but instead of one person buying it, 100 people, 1,000 people, 10 people, they can all invest in the diamond as a group ownership, and then have a smart contract which would lay out the rules where the diamond would be sold down the road and everybody would split the proceeds. But I think it's a much better way to sell because you're allowing many more people involved and you don't have to just sell it to one particular person. I really like that concept. I think it's a concept of the future that's here today, and we will be using our blockchain for auction purposes to help our clients sell their diamonds by the end of this year, that we will be starting our first auctions using blockchain. So as it develops further and is more popular and we become more successful at it, again, I think that our clients are going to find that this is the way to market higher priced items, classic cars, rare art, rare diamonds, than it is to be just at a standard auction where you're looking for one particular person to buy it. So I'm excited about that concept, and I think it's going to do very, very well for our clients.
There are people doing it in the rare car market. So yes, it's something that's out there and will become very popular in the future. Ask Carol about blockchain, rare colored diamonds, in particular the Argyle pink diamond, because there is an incredible opportunity there. Speak with Harold at 1-800-432-1022, the website rarecoloreddiamonds.com. As we get to the end of the podcast, I hope everyone had a happy Halloween yesterday. This is amazing to me. How much money did pet owners spend on costumes for their pets this Halloween? Close to $500 million. $480 million was spent on pet costumes. And as I was going through Instagram this morning, lots of people posted pictures of their pets on Instagram, all dressed up. Harold, please don't tell me you dressed up your dog.
I did not dress
okay,
up
thankfully.
my dog. I did. And the thing is, we live in a community where there's 40 homes, but, most of the people now are older. So we had all of 7 kids come by last night for Halloween. And I think last year we had all of 3. So we don't get as many. So no, we did not dress Trixie up. She's cute enough as she is. She's a toy Australian Shepherd that weighs 9 pounds. Just a really beautiful dog. So she didn't need a costume. Hardly had anybody here last night, but my grandson AJ went out with his dad, and they had an amazing time. And, all is well on Halloween.
And Trixie thanks you for not
yes.
not having the poor little dog dressed up. So just a reminder here now, the time change is coming up on Sunday. Spring forward, fall back. Clocks go back. November 11, Remembrance Day, is Sunday. So that means November the 12th for a lot of people will be a day off. We send our thoughts and prayers again out to those affected by the shooting at the synagogue in Pittsburgh. Just a horrific, horrific event. And as we end things, it will be an interesting Sunday night. The Green Bay Packers, my team, play the New England Patriots, Harold's team. Harold, we're looking forward to this game. 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, Tommy Brady versus A-Rod, as we call him, Packer fans, Aaron Rodgers. It should be one heck of a game.
No matter what happens, no matter what the outcome, we'll always be buddies.
Oh, of course.
Of course. But yeah, I cannot wait. It's going to be a great game. And I agree with you. 2 of the greatest quarterbacks ever to play the game. And I just cannot wait for Sunday night.
Going to be a great game. Harold, thank you for your knowledge and another great podcast.
It's my pleasure, Randy. I wish everybody a wonderful weekend and a very profitable day.
Speak with Harold about blockchain, also rare colored diamonds. Get our free weekly newsletter, the companion to the podcast. It's a quick read. You'll be completely up to date. RareColoredDiamonds.com, 1-800-432-1022. That's it. Another edition of the World Financial Report podcast. My name is Randy Marshall for Harold Siegel. We will talk to you next week.